We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody just do your job. You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Thank you, Lee. Thank you, seasonality. Steven, you've been pretty ill of late. You're deplagued right now in time for the national championship?
What, like NCA and Ad Rock, or do you mean like Illmatic or like Nas or?
It's a good question.
I want to know the plurality of the audience that picked that one up.
MCA Ad Rock?
That one. I think Illmatic and Nas folks know, but the first one is.
Do you think a 22-year-old right now knows about?
No.
No.
Neither.
No way, right?
Neither.
Like if I were to say the following phrase, I sided with Nas. Do you think anyone knows who we sided against?
I don't think. Alex, do you know who he sided against?
Jay-Z.
Yes. Okay. So I don't know anybody. If you're under.
We're here to educate.
Basically, if you're younger than us, Alex. So if you're under 30, I would say under 25, no chance. I would say between 25 and 30, we have a fighting chance.
Yeah, honestly, I'm pretty surprised that I have that one in my bag, that I knew that.
Look, man, he called him a Tybo ho, and I don't even know if anyone knows what Tybo is.
Tybo, yeah, I don't know. Like
he called him a Tybo ho. Let me tell you something. Hey, rap was better when I was young too. It is better than it is now. Everything was better.
Sure,
sorry,
of course.
Just is.
Of course it was.
Just was.
These are both award-winning artists. It has us in an awards-giving mood. Fellas, this is our fifth year doing our fifth full season doing Split Zone Duo. And most of those years, I forget what year we started it, we have awarded our own version. Yeah, we've awarded our own version of season end awards here. The Zonies, I like to call them.
The Splitty Ds. It's right there for you. The Splitty Ds.
Can we say, I don't know. The Zonies, in my opinion. The audience can decide. But anyway, it's the 2024 Split Zone Duo Awards. We do these our way. These are different than the awards that are given out nationally at the big banquet that you see on ESPN. We'll get right to them. This is a quick thank you and a friendly appreciation to all of you who are subscribed at splitzoneduo.com. You help us make this show, but you also get more podcasts from our team here at Split Zone Duo. This week, splitzoneduo.com subscribers will get the big, grand old Coach Carousel wrap. We're going to empty our notebooks, talk about things we haven't talked about yet, and explain the state of the coaching carousel as we wrap up what has been, I wouldn't say an uninteresting, but a pretty quiet and muted Coach Carousel year. That's at splitzoneduo.com. This week, it might already be in your feed by the time you're listening to this. All right, fellas, the 2024 Zonies, or the Splitty Ds, whatever we're calling it.
I don't like either one of those things.
Splitty Ds. Splitty Ds.
I'm not sure.
I like Splitty Ds.
I just.
First, team of the year. The criterion for this award, it's not the best team. That'll be decided in a couple of days, or the championship team will be decided in a couple of days as we record. But the team that did something that personally appealed to you, that you have now become a lot more interested in going forward, or that you just really enjoyed watching and really spiced up the 2024 season to you. Richard Johnson, your team of the year.
I think it's quite clearly Arizona State. At the end of the day, Kenny Dillingham really has something here. Arizona State is a team where year after year after year, you try to talk yourself into it, right? Metro area, young up and coming, Phoenix, for God's sakes. They sell you all the stuff. It was in a clunky fashion, but the kernel of it that Herm Edwards and Ray Anderson were trying to sell, like, that's it. The way they did it, not well, but what they were trying to get at, obviously quite good. They hired this young guy, Kenny Dillingham, who's like 2 years older than me. Really sharp cat, Florida State offensive coordinator, Oregon offensive coordinator, son of the Valley. Does he really have it? And apparently he does. And they did it with, something of an aisle of misfit toys. Cam Scatabo is an FCS transfer up. They did it with these guys. They did it without their best player for the back half, the best receiver at least, for the back half of November and into the playoff. Certainly got away with it a little bit. Got away with it against BYU. Got away with it on the what was the Thursday night game that Dillingham was really pissed about?
BYU? No.
Not BYU, the other one.
Wait, sorry, BYU was a Saturday game.
They played Texas State on a weeknight.
Yes. Got away with it against Texas State a little bit. Certainly, you had to have a kernel of luck to do this. And then they did it in the Big 12, which, for God's sakes, everybody knows is a league where you can very easily talk yourself into and pull off worst to first and first to worst.
Where
But
champions play.
Arizona State is like one Rose Bowl ever when they were in the Pac-12. Just always sort of there, and you try to talk yourself into it, but never really able to get over the hump. And like they moved from they were a Pac-12 after dark meme team when the Pac-12 was still a thing. And they're finally able to summit here. And then they get into this game against Texas. And not only did they give Texas absolute hell, I mean, they got to overtime against Texas after a first quarter in which they didn't look like they belonged on the field. So there's a lot there with this Arizona State team that for me makes me take them as team of the year.
Also, I think that the Jordan Tyson injury that you mentioned really burnished his FFC fucking football coach, as you would call it, bona fides at the end of the season. They were, to my eye, completely outmatched against not just Texas, but Iowa State. Like, without a good receiver. They only had one receiver on the roster who could do anything, and he was gone. And Iowa State had a pretty good defensive front themselves, and they bulldozed them to win the Big 12. And then, obviously, the competitiveness against Texas with what we think is certainly a top 2, maybe the best defensive line in the country, depending on how you think about Ohio State. Clearly, this guy can not just bring energy and win the press conference, but can coach ball. Very interesting stuff.
And I think that with Arizona State specifically, like, you do have, and I think it may be a little extreme the way he does it, but you do have Kenny Dillingham as a guy who is like, I don't care. You want a portal? Like, we'll help you find a new home. You stick around with us. We'll help you find a new home, but play with us through the postseason. Like, you have, I think, the anti-Dabo in Kenny Dillingham and his approach to the portal, the anti-old head. I think Kenny Dillingham has been effusive in how much he embraces the new era of college football and how much he embraces the portal and how much he just will deal with it. So Arizona State's fascinating to me, and it was a lot of fun this year.
My turn. Is it?
It is.
All right. I would have picked Arizona State if I was going to do this the way it was assigned. Because I was in our doc last night and I thought about it. Because everything Richard just said is the football answer of the football season. But Alex said specifically, this is what it says in our show notes. Not the best team. The team that did something you really liked that you are interested in moving forward. There are a lot of people in college football who are Miami Hurricane fans. But there's way, way more people who are not. And there's a fraction of people, some of whom I know personally, but not present company, who graduated from the University of Florida and secretly hate dealing with anything to do with Miami. That's not Richard. That's our older crew. Okay. If you are ambivalent about Miami, how could you not love what Miami brings you? You don't have to love the Hurricanes. You don't have to talk about the ACC as a football conference. You don't even really have to use the processing parts of your mind, gentlemen. This is, hands down, the dumbest, most entertaining. Okay, there's this show on Netflix called Emily in Paris, and then it came out like a year and a half after it
Pronounce
became...
it correctly, please.
Emily in Paris?
Isn't it Emily in Paris? Emily in Paris?
Here's the point.
I couldn't tell you.
It came out, and then eventually some story in the tech sector broke that show is designed to be watched passively. In other words, like while you're scrolling your Gram or whatever, or you're on the old TikTok, you're like kind of watching this show. And there's a whole new market for that in streamers. If you don't want to think, but you want to see something go bang, you know all those rock movies with like Ryan Reynolds that go straight to streaming? That's Miami. If you don't have a game on for your team in a block, like the 2:30 block or whatever, okay? Pulling up the schedule right now. Why would you not watch this team? Now, is Cam Ward going to be there next year? No. Are they paying Carson Beck like $4 million or something to probably be super mid? Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Is that going to be amazing to watch either way, either outcome? Absolutely. Alex, I was answering your questions out of order for the show, and I'm going to go ahead and spoil. I desperately wanted to answer Miami for like play or moment of the season because of that stupid Virginia Tech ending. But I don't think that best represents the joy that Miami can bring you. You had a Heisman invitee or whatever finalist who is an awesome player who came from a triple option offense in a Texas high school via Incarnate Word in Washington State. Think about week one. Everyone's like, oh man, they're national title contenders. They are crushing Florida. Okay.
Yeah.
Then I want you to jump ahead to that random Friday night game where I was at, I think it was the Wild Robot with my kids. And I walked out and I was like, what is happening? Great, like parking lot on the phone moment.
This is the Tech game.
Yeah. And then you know what happened the next week? Miami at Cal in Berkeley. What a beautiful shit show that was. That's great football. I'm not asking for, I don't want to see Ohio State win every week with their $20 million roster. I want to see somebody like bet someone they can't jump off of a roof flat-footed while they're drunk. I've seen that happen in college. Like, that's Miami. Yeah. I'll eat that firework. Like, yeah, you got $20. You know, the cracker thing you do in the bar at college, like you can't eat 6 crackers and 60 cents. That's Miami. They are guaranteed to be, Alex, for your rubric of answering this, next year, they're going to be a well-funded team. Okay. Mario Cristobal is going to recruit talent, and they're going to portal talent, and they're going to pay talent. It's Miami. City, culture, ethos, bravado, hubris, Miami. That one, okay? A friend of the program, Lucy Roden, described it to me living there as it is the only place in America where the social contract has completely broken down. Okay? So there's that, and it's also Mario Cristobal. So yeah, is he going to recruit that talent? Absolutely. Is he basically going to take it the way like a 7-year-old like on Ritalin would just shake up a box of action figures? Yeah, he can't manage anything. This is going to be fantastic. This is, dude, I'm not guaranteeing a title. This isn't Dennis Erickson. This isn't Jimmy Johnson. This isn't Schnelly. This is just the most entertaining. Like would you Google like how to make homemade fireworks? This is going to be fantastic for at least 3 more years. I'm so excited about what Miami gave us this year, which, by the way, and I want to be clear here, if you hate Miami, dude, that Georgia Tech game was funny as hell. Like watching Brent Key just come in with a rubber mallet and just kind of like, oh, it was fantastic. And then I watched in a quad the Syracuse game start to finish. You knew it. You knew that game was going to happen. You knew that game was going to happen. It was the Saturday after Thanksgiving. They're up there in the freezing cold in the dome. They're talking themselves into the ACC championship. You knew that game was going to happen. And it was also great for Fran Brown, who I think we all kind of have a mutual admiration society for right now. Miami gave you, oh, by the way, then they lost 42-41 to Iowa State in a bowl game. What more do you want?
The Pop-Tart bowl game. The maybe the most gimmicky of all bowl games right now.
That was hands down the most entertaining thing I've seen.
With their quarterback standing on the sideline in the second half as part of a handshake deal. Yeah,
I'm not going to remember this. This is the Thor Ragnarok of like it was like, well, that was really loud and funny and weird. I don't know what it added to the entire canon here. This isn't Citizen Kane, but God, this was a blast. And y'all know they're going to do it next year. You know they are. By the way, you know who they open up against?
It's not Florida again.
Notre Dame.
Yeah. They play Florida in like week 4, I think.
You can convince me anything will happen as long as it is excessively overwrought and stupid. I can't wait. Team of the year. Best picture.
Also, something that I really like about Miami is that Mario really did play the hits this year. Like,
he lost to Tech again.
Yeah, but Godfrey, you love the National. We've talked about this.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been to a lot of national shows.
Sad
and
dad.
like when the National puts on a show, they pretty much always play the top things in their catalog. Like every National song that I knew like they were playing it when I saw them in Washington, D.C. last year.
Okay.
I'll close this metaphor.
All right.
They are Mario Cristobal or any band. When I was in college, freshman year, MGMT did a show on campus at the University of Maryland. And everyone hated it because they didn't play Kids, which was their most popular song.
Yeah, I mean, I get that. I get that. Yeah.
At the time.
What?
Among white college kids at Maryland.
I mean, yeah, I don't want to be too
whatever.
Colonel Tom Parker about this, but
Mario-
get your ass out there and sing the hits.
Come on.
So, like,
At least for the
you know,
encore. Don't be an asshole.
like you know why
But,
we're
like, the
here.
National is
we
gonna
really
play.
want to play the songs
Yeah.
from a new album tonight, and you're like, shit.
Yeah, like,
Exactly.
what
exactly.
on earth?
The National is not going to do that. They're going to play Fake Empire wherever they do a show.
That's not their biggest
Mario-
hit, but go on.
What-
I'll let you.
Mario-
That's fine.
In any Miami loss is going to just butcher the clock and timeouts in a way
Mhm.
that you didn't think possible. And he did that in both their losses this year. They had a 4th down timeout punt team management issue at the end of the Georgia Tech game. They had a terrible field goal that lets them not getting the ball back when they were trying to cut the lead down against Syracuse. Like, Mario will lose a game or two a year. He's good for it in the same way. And, you know, I'm with
You're
you.
gonna see
I appreciate fan service. It's what I like about the Marvel movies, even though I don't think they're great. Like, you do fan service. Like, there's Stan Lee somewhere over there. And that's Mario with the clock management.
It's fantastic in so many ways because interspersed with those things, which are totally valid criticisms, and at least in really big games, like they're gonna happen. You're gonna also see wildly talented players doing like that was the best part of this. All bit aside, is that interspersed with the Mario of it all, like Cam Ward did some like truly amazing freelance stuff. I would say, I don't know, would you say 60 to 70% of his best plays of the season probably weren't scripted quite like they have it? You know,
it's
like,
yeah,
there was a lot of schoolyard, and I say that as a compliment because that shit's fun to watch.
Miami, well-deserved SZD Team of the Year nominee. Winner for one of us. I'm taking South Carolina for my Team of the Year. I thought they were the most fun team to watch in the Southeastern Conference. The backfield of Lenora Sellers and Rocket Sanders was a joy. That game against Missouri in November, where both of those teams were still nominally in the playoff hunt at that time. Obviously, it didn't work out for South Carolina, even though they did win out. Felt like a really big deal, a fun game. It was won on a nice Rocket Sanders run after Mizzou had taken a late lead on a Luther Burden ball. It was just a really good back and forth game, and I think it was typical of the kind of entertaining ball that South Carolina played all year. I think Shane Beamer's doing a nice job here. It might be maxed out. I don't know. Richard, do you think it's maxed out? It might be. I could see them turning 9-3, and like 9-3 again could, in the right year, be a playoff team. But I want to be clear that I'm appreciating this team for what it's been, not necessarily saying that I think they're going to take another step. I still think it's been good.
I have not. I haven't looked at their schedule next year, so I'm not all the way sure there. But South Carolina is the proof positive that the 12-team playoff format, like the 12-team format gave us what it promised, which is more participation in at least the dance. Now, yes, did it get done with Alabama and Ole Miss? Absolutely. But South Carolina's November was worth paying attention to because they had a plausible shot to get to the playoff.
And they were getting better as the year went. Yep.
But this might, like, they're not just a team like Baylor, for instance, which we're going to talk about. Baylor is a team that gets better over the course of the season, and congrats on the bowl you went to that I don't even remember. Like, sick. But South Carolina had a run to an outside postseason chance, which at the end of the day is good. It's the thing where just because you lose 2 or 3 games, we shouldn't forget about you. We should pay attention to you. And in college football, which is a sport which is obviously quite crowded, you need to give people a carrot to pay attention to you. And if and an outside chance at the postseason is a carrot to pay attention to.
It is. Also, in a way, the sequencing was unfortunate. They finished 9-3. 2 of those 3 were Alabama and Ole Miss. Alabama, very close game in Tuscaloosa. Ole Miss blew them out. It's a bummer the way it worked out because I'm pretty convinced that if they had not, if those losses were not to the teams that were sitting next to them in the playoff hunt, I think they would have jumped those teams in the playoff race. And, you know, you never know, might have even jumped Miami as well, just because of the the difficulty of assessing head to head. Like I think by the end of the year, South Carolina was playing better, looked like a better team than Alabama and Ole Miss. It was just hard to jump them because the games have to matter, and they lost those games. It's also worth remembering that LSU game that took like 4 hours back in September. South Carolina wins that game, if not for a garbage personal foul call on, I believe, Kyle Kennard on Garrett Nussmeier after a pick six had gone the other way for 100 yards or so. These guys played really well. They beat Clemson on the road in a rivalry game. And I think, Godfrey, that Beamer is running the program well. Like if you look at the different ways they're acquiring talent, it's kind of what you have to do if you're South Carolina. Like South Carolina's in a place where they have to recruit high schools well, and they can. There are some good players in that footprint, but you're never going to really compete in the SEC without smart portaling. You have to do a bit of both there. It's not a place where you can just import. And that's what they've done. Like Kennard was a great ad from Georgia Tech. Dylan Stewart, the other edge rusher in that great tandem, high schooler from the DMV, where the Beamer name still carries some weight, I think. Rocket Sanders came from Arkansas. Lenore Sellers is a developmental quarterback from South Carolina who redshirted for a year. Just seems like they have a diversified portfolio of ways to build. And that does make me optimistic about what they can be.
I'm just worried about South Carolina in that a team like that, is it now the NFL, like really solid 10-6 season? They grabbed a wild card, and then the next season it doesn't mean a thing.
Maybe
that has nothing to do with the roster construction or the coaching or really anything about South Carolina. It has to do with the fact that a highly competitive field, no one has a blueprint yet, transient talent, all that. Although I guess I'm going to argue with myself now. You have Sellers, so you have. I mean, it's not like you're going. It's not a back like of all of the rosters that we can think of who were top 25 or 30 this year. They're not towards the top and starting from scratch, as far as we know right now. The other thing is, I'll let you know a little secret about the college football media industry right now. We don't know what the fuck's going on. We don't know how to predict any of this stuff anymore because the portal just chews through talent. Like we don't. It's incredibly hard to prognosticate. So maybe I should just appreciate South Carolina for what they were in 24.
Yeah, it was
I didn't
good.
get the super. They were fun, but like obviously, I just did my bit on Miami. I did not have as much fun with South Carolina as other people did.
Oh, I thought that was it was tremendous. I thought that was tremendous. Like
I thought some of their games, they played a lot of fun games. The LSU game was one of the most fun games of the year. The Missouri
LSU
game was one of the most
Bama.
fun games of the year, and the Clemson game was a good one as well.
Yeah, I guess LSU, Bama, and Clemson were the ones I have like memories of. Yeah.
Them beating Clemson is always fun because it never supposed to happen in air quotes. But
that's so crazy to me, Richard, because I covered for SB Nation the fifth or sixth in a row that they won against Clemson.
They were beating their ass. Yeah.
Spurrier was, oh my God. Portage Boyd.
Gents, as we move it forward, the split zone duo moment of the year. It can be a play. It can be a game. It can be anything that made you feel, God damn, I love college football. That was a blast. Steven, give it to me.
Okay, so I swapped this one out. There's recency bias here, and I went back and looked at a bunch of people's schedules last night, but I couldn't get over this. I think a lot of people have this thing where it's like, you're talking about what was your favorite thing or what was your favorite piece of media, and you probably have a circumstantial setting for it. Like, oh, I remember where I was when this happened. That were like, I was by myself traveling and it had just gotten wherever I was. I can't remember. I think I had gotten back home and maybe my family was still Thanksgiving and I had to work or I don't know. But I had a cold or flu or God knows what I've had for 6 weeks. And I watched Clean Old Fashioned Hate to its ending by myself and just kind of had an out loud conversation with myself. You ever do that in like a hotel room when you're watching a game? You're like, well, no one can hear me. I'm the person next door, whatever. It was so stupid and fun that I said on like my single wings way back in the summer, it's like kind of try and seek some joy from the game this year and not worry so much about the state of it, if that's possible. And I also made a thing called Who Killed College Football, but the Clean Old Fashioned Hate had almost everything that you would want in a narrative sense and in a sort of momentary social media clip sense, because you go by all of those overtime plays and some of their excessive silliness Georgia Tech coming out and stomping ass. All right. I can't remember how big the lead was at one point. I don't have
17, right?
Right.
14 or 17.
The shambling zombie-like quality of Georgia, which we had seen against Alabama. The deficiencies of Georgia on display to fall behind to Tech that much in Athens to begin with. And then ultimately the comeback, the tie, and the overtime. I was like, and it ending with Brent Key, like standing there like that man genuinely hates Georgia. And if you are a Georgian and you go to Tech and then you coach it, you play at Tech, you coach at Tech as a position coach, as a head coach, and you're like, I was telling someone this week about Keith Brooking, the famous Falcons and Cowboys linebacker, because he grew up in Sinoa, dreaming of going to Georgia. They wouldn't recruit him. I think it was Ray Goff, and he ends up at Tech. That kind of bee, them kind of bees.
I was just like, how many times do you think Brent Key has beaten Georgia? Like it has to be less than 5.
Well,
right?
I mean, I don't want to derail the pod,
right?
But the idea here is that was on display in a very personal, passionate, and sort of character defining way. And I'm like, ooh, I want sign me up for this shit. This is the thing that we all came to that we loved. And it was like, football game whiz bang and all that kind of stuff, which was like some of those plays were just absurd. Okay, Richard,
yeah, I'm quickly ripping it. I'm doing the same thing.
I'm trying to find the playing career.
Beat him a few times as a player.
Yeah, he did actually.
Yeah.
Georgia,
that's
O'Leary.
Yeah.
Shit, I knew that. Yeah, that was O'Leary.
Yeah.
So
Sorry.
97 to 2000, Brent Key was playing for Georgia Tech,
We're
and
losing
Georgia
some
Tech.
We weirdly have a lot of Tech patrons, like subscribers, and they are mad at us.
Yeah,
right
no.
now.
Tech won 3 out of 4 when Key was in school, so he's tasted
Alex.
And then he ain't had the scent in a long time though, because
well, and on top of that, they got to watch him become this monolith. Alex, other than my absolute and total superiority when it comes to all things Spencer Petras, do you want to? I'll use this whatever remaining time I have. You said we would never see Georgia Tech beat Georgia again, or remember you said
said something like how
you
many
set these
years?
stakes like will it be
50?
decades?
Yeah.
And what were your thoughts? I mean, like up 17, and then
well, my thoughts afterward were, it's going to be decades if it didn't happen right then.
because they didn't do it on the night. Yeah,
really?
Yeah. I think that I might have said this on the hurry up after that game. Sometimes I just, as you guys both know, we sort of black out after we say things on the podcast. We say so many words
every week.
But I at least thought to myself, like, that would extinguish my love for football if I were a Georgia Tech fan. What happened in that game?
Oh, you watched your team run the triple option in the ACC for 20 years. You've seen some shit.
Excuse me?
It worked until it didn't.
Excuse me?
It worked until it didn't.
Fucking heresy. I don't know. Maybe, I don't know. I'm a Falcons fan, so that's my lens for everything. Ryan and Spencer this week, I think, were playing an elaborate con on me because they were both telling me, they're like, man, it must be tough to be a Vikings fan. And I was like, damn it, you're doing this to me, right? Like, you're screwing with me right now. And they were like, yeah, Vikings have had a tough road. You imagine being that disappointed? And I was like, what? I think if you're a Tech fan, I think you're actually optimistic.
It was a good year. I told you guys in the
bridge
ACC
coach.
preview.
Bridge coach. Remember this guy? Remember this guy telling you that, like, J-Bat wanted a bridge coach. You know why? Think about this. If Willie Fritz doesn't have Tulane in that conference championship game, he's probably your head coach. I probably would be good because I think Houston's going to be good next year. But you got a bridge coach at a bargain rate. J-Bat looks like a fucking genius. And now they can hopefully build around this guy the way, I mean, Georgia Tech has some deep pocketed alums. They gotta kick him in their little engineering nerd butts to get to write some checks, but like this could be a good thing.
I was going to say, now they've been like writing it now.
Yeah.
They've been writing some checks now. Now I know they just lost a really good player in Singleton, the receiver, but they've been bringing in a recruiting class that is quite serious.
There is a belief, just a belief. I don't know if I 100% buy it, but just a belief from people in the Fritz camp, and Willie Fritz wound up at Houston, that if an administrator at Georgia Tech had been more patient and
Yes.
possibly did not want to go on like a vacation at the end of that year. That's their belief. That's the Fritz camp's belief.
Oh, this is is
that
it
Fritz
Disney
would have been the
or-
Georgia
It was
Tech
either
coach.
Disney
Now-
or a cruise. This
Now,
story
this
has
is
been
a
told
belief
several
that sometimes agents, just have this belief, or agents types people. That's the side of the business that I heard that from. Was someone in the agency world said to me that if Georgia Tech didn't have someone wanting to get out of the office at the end of the year, they would have hired
God,
Fritz.
that's good.
If it was Disney,
doesn't get
I'm
wrong.
like, man, that shit's hard to move. I get you. I feel like I get it. And hey, all's well that ends well, because I think Houston's going to be good next year. Better.
Yeah,
you know.
it worked out well. Worked
I
out
think they're
fine for
going to have
everybody.
they'll have a 2-lane type build.
Work-life balance as well. Sometimes you got to get out of the office at the end of the year. It's just the way
If
that
our
it goes.
former boss Nate Scott is still listening, I'm going to start really hitting the 3 O's in 2-lane just to make him mad. 2-lane.
Let's play a little audio. Play a little audio here. Our dear producer Anthony Vito for my moment of the year.
4th and goal from the 1. Cougs trying to stop the Huskies. 1:12 left to go. Washington State up 24-19. Huskies break the huddle. Tight formation. Coleman running back to the left of Rodgers, awaiting the shotgun snap. Here's the snap. Rodgers rolls out to his right, looking to pitch it. He does the last second. The Cougs get the stop. The Cougs get the stop. Shy of the first down and getting into the end zone. Washington State with the stop. Cougs take over. 1:07 left to go. 2 timeouts left for the Huskies. 5-point Washington State lead.
That's Chris King of the Washington State Sports Network from Learfield. And that is my split zone duo moment of the year, because that was in September in the Apple Cup. Washington with 4th down in the game and a chance to beat Washington State, and getting stacked up on an option play to the short side that ran out of room and led to the Cougs winning the Apple Cup. There's not a lot of times, I think, that college football feels particularly just, right? Like the big generally get bigger and the weaker generally get weaker. And Washington has a lot of Big Ten money now, and institutionally, athletically is going to have more privilege in this sport than Wazoo. But that moment didn't matter. Didn't matter. It was a good atmosphere. They played it at the Seahawks Stadium. And Washington, which has at that time was, coming off a national championship game and had moved to the Big Ten and had all this going for it, had to eat shit and watch its rival, its now much poorer rival, celebrate.
Well,
on a
I don't
neutral
know.
Field.
I don't know how much poor for right
Actually,
now.
good point. For right now, because
for
Washington
right
State
now.
gets to have many millions of dollars for the Pac-12 that they share with Oregon State. But, a disadvantaged side of that rivalry, and they got to rub it in on Washington after that game. That's pretty cool. That's fun. You don't see a ton of that, especially, of course you see the, generally like little brother or whatever you would call it rival win some games, but to do it so quickly after the shivving of the 2 remaining Pac-12 schools was just a cool combination that, circumstantially we might never see again. So that's my moment of the year.
My moment in that moment was, I thought, oh, okay, I'll get Peacock. Because it was the first time.
Was that a peacocker? Yeah.
Yeah. It was the first time I was like, I gotta, all right. And I did like your
You
Peacock.
don't want to watch Notre Dame against God knows who.
Peacock was doing like that Sirius XM, please don't leave me, baby, I'll change like offer where it's like $9 for 7 years or like, so whatever. But I signed up for Peacock. Yeah.
Richard, your moment of the year. We gonna give us a fracas. Give us some fisticuffs.
I'll give you a freak eye, honestly. The fights plural on Rivalry Week. I think removed. I think we're removed enough from it. If I have, I'm going to do it off the top of my head. I'm going to miss a couple, but it was North Carolina State, Florida State, Arizona State, which was a trident, not a flag plant. There is one other I'm missing. And then there is a piece, there is a ston, the one by which, frankly, all post-game fights for years to come in this sport should be judged. It's not FIU, Miami.
Yeah,
whichever.
that's where I was headed.
It's not Ned. Understand that. and it's not that post game BYU Memphis like bowl game thing.
Hell yeah.
But adjusted for opponent, adjusted for stage, and adjusted for stake, the post
And by
game
stakes, you mean there were tasers being held in athletes' stomachs
there
by
was
an
actually
overactive police officer.
activity happening on the field. The Ohio State Michigan fight it's a classic of the genre, man. It really is. And
Crazy.
I understand that we don't condone violence on this podcast, but don't sit here and do that. Regular season's devalued because of the playoff. If Ohio State wins the national championship, awesome. Congratulations. Michigan fans, you get to hold that game over them forever, and you know that it's going to chap their ass, even if they say in the wake of the championship that it doesn't, because for the last 6 weeks, they've still said that it chaps their ass. So it doesn't matter.
Richard.
So Michigan fans, not only do you have the result of the game, which looks more inexplicable the further away we get from it, as Ohio State has apparently burned that game plan and changed into their final form. But you also
forward pass.
But Michigan fans, you also have the thing you crave the most, the thing you crave even more than beating Ohio State on the field of play. You have moral superiority over them because you didn't start the fight. They did.
You know, this is a minority view among Michigan fans. Let's be very clear off the top. This is not what most of them want. We are recording this a few days before the national championship in Atlanta. I have heard both offline and online from Michigan fans who want Ohio State to, or who say
Yes.
they want Ohio State to win the national championship game. Now, I
Yes.
think there's quite a bit of engineering so you win either way thing. It's just cope.
That's exactly what it is.
But there are Michigan fans who are at least claiming that they want Ohio State to win the national championship, with the idea being that they accept that in the long history of college football, Ohio State's going to win some national championships. So how funny would it be if in one of those years they took the funniest loss in the history of Ohio State, Michigan? I get it. I think that's I know it's a minority view, and most Michigan fans do not hold it that way, but I get it, right? Like, I get it.
I should say this about the literal starting of the fight. Again, we don't condone violence on this podcast. We understand that. If you plant the flag on the field in my stadium, we got to fight. Sorry. Man's got to have a code, and that's the code.
What about learning to lose?
That's the code. If you plant the flag on my field, is what it is.
Hey, man, I'm more of a Steve Spurrier guy.
So
stop him from doing it in the first place.
So yes, and I agree with that. But come on, man, you got to have some pride. All right. So we don't condone violence, but you got to have some pride.
Your split zone duo. That was a good take. All right, it's a good take, and I don't agree with it, but it was good radio. Like, people are listening right now. It'll be good for ratings. Proof of concept of the year, another split zone duo award. This is for a good new hire or second year coach. And let's be honest here. We know that this is either Curt Cignetti or Kenny Dillingham, but I was hoping that we could pick other coaches who proved concept this year and honor them in our year-end plaudits. Steven?
So, okay. Not Sig, not Dillingham is basically what we're going to say here.
Yeah, let's make it more interesting than that.
Okay, all right.
Bronze medal game.
No one yells at me.
Well, yeah, I mean, okay. We have one of them had the greatest season in school history. So that's
at the losingest program in history. So, like, all right, guy. My knee-jerk reaction was Dillingham. To get to that point and be a screw job flag away from beating. No, I'm not going to do that. I try to swerve here and pick something unique just for the conversation. Could I interest you in a Brian Newberry? Anybody? What's our first reaction to this? Here's why.
Very, very nice.
Alex specified when he requested these for a good new hire or second year coach. No repeats. Second year. All right, 2023, he's 500 in the American, and they're 5-7 at Navy. Obviously, they lost to Army in 2023. Navy won 10 games this year after their arch rival had probably the most attention they've ever had on them in 30, 40, whatever years it is, World War II years, right?
Yep.
They beat them.
Bad.
Like, beat their ass, right? And then, by the way, if you didn't notice, they did beat Oklahoma in a bowl game as well. I'm not going to do the argue about the condition of that and, well, it's the postseason or portal. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. So I feel really strongly that, like, whatever you had in terms of a criticism against Brian Newberry to be a worthy successor to Kendi Amatalolo or to hit the standards that Navy was looking for. Navy, let me tell you what Navy was looking for. Army won the American. I get that. By the way, I think I'm right about this. If you play the American Athletic Championship game as a service academy, you have then now lost the Army-Navy game. You want to talk about priorities in the sport? Like, some schools are like, we don't care about the national championship. We want to go to the Rose Bowl kind of thing. I wrote a story about that.
The effectively exhibition game at the end of the season.
And that's just, I think I'm correct in that. I just remember because the year Army broke the streak, Navy played Temple.
2016.
Yeah.
2016 Navy had a very funny looking 9-5 record. You don't see a ton of those.
Well, the reason in that game was that in that Temple game, Navy lost their backup quarterback who was already in play, or like they lost their starter, their backup. I think they started third string quarterback against Army in that game. Anyway, there was a tremendous amount of pressure on Newberry to make all-time great AD name Chet. Everybody ready? Gladchuck. Just like, it was like AI generated that name. It just, my God. Who doesn't have the greatest reputation based on the way things shook out with Ken. By the way, they beat Alex's favorite program, Memphis, 56-44 back in September. We kind of didn't notice for a while. And it was funny because they kind of had a table setting situation where we were like, oh, no, they're not that good. Or they were able to really surprise us all with the Army game and the Oklahoma Bowl game because they lost 3 of 4, including a Notre Dame game they didn't have any business playing in. Same as Army, by the way. And then Tulane blanked them. Tulane just kicked their ass. So for them to turn around and win those 2 games, the Army game being more important than anything else, it's evident now Newberry is capable of this. They had a 10-win season. And then, by the way, I want to shout this out maybe as a co-champion or sort of like honorable mention. Kendi Amatalolo, who was fired by Navy, regardless of what they say, got a job. Shout out to Khalil Tate in Arizona from 8 years ago or whatever it was, who said, this I won't do this, it won't work. And then Ken did what he had said privately to all those job interviews for all those years. I'm not going to run the triple. We're going to do what's best. Like, academy coaches can be good coaches, and Ken took San Jose State to a bowl. Like, I don't want that to fall by the wayside while I'm talking about Newberry.
With the nation's leading wide receiver playing for this longtime flexbone coach.
Well, they're basically running the run and shoot. It's called something different now, but it's the run and shoot, which Ken worked on run and shoot staffs in Hawaii when there's an adjacency to the run and shoot and the triple in the Paul Johnson tree in Hawaii. So it's just football. It's just like these guys are not beholden to systems unless you're Chip Kelly and you're playing Michigan.
Richard, got any concept to prove?
Okay, it's not a first or a second year coach, but how is it not either Billy Napier or Dave Aranda? Both of whom left for dead as far as their tenures are concerned. You could argue Billy backed into it because Graham Mertz gets hurt, and so they have to play the supernova that is DJ Lagway. And then Baylor figures it out down the stretch and, frankly, becomes one of the most consistent teams coming home, particularly on offense. Very quietly because they didn't really have a shot to actually win the league. So one of the things that doesn't often happen is you leave these coaches tenure for dead and they save themselves, at least in schools like this, schools the profile of Florida and Baylor, and yet both of them did. And so I don't know. I think it's quite clearly Florida and Baylor, even though they're not obviously first or second year head coaches.
Good pick. I'm with Baylor in particular on this because there was a very fresh concept being proven, which was, damn, these guys can score a lot of points, and the guys who are scoring these points for them have eligibility remaining. I think I'm probably going to lay it on pretty thick with Baylor in the Big 12 preview when we
They
get
were
there
like
this year.
1-4, weren't they?
Yeah,
Like Baylor was even worse off than Florida was. I mean, I know
For
Florida
the
got
last-
smoked by the time they headed into that Mississippi State game in the end of September, but
yeah, for the last 8 or 10 weeks of the season, Baylor was the top 5 offense by every big metric that you could imagine. Like, they were just really, really good once they figured it out. They messed up with the portal. They got the Toledo quarterback Daquan Finn and played him, and it didn't go well. Once they settled on Sawyer Robertson and some of their receivers and young running backs like Bryson Washington got going, they were good. I think that's a good answer because I think it is specifically a concept of what that offense is going to look like that bodes very well for their future.
Alex, your point about did we pick the wrong quarterback out of the portal is a thing that it is going to rattle around my head a lot this offseason. Because what happened at SMU? I mean, SMU, it's I don't know.
Yep.
That is a thing that I'm really paying attention to this year. Did we pick the wrong quarterback out of the portal? Because SMU goes and gets Tyler Van Dyke. And so what are we going to do next year with Kevin Jennings if Kevin Jennings ends up, if Kevin Jennings isn't the starter or they play Kevin Jennings for a couple games and it doesn't work out? I'm fascinated with how that works.
Man, that is, man. All I can say about Van Dyke to SMU is, man,
good job. Get that money. I'm proud of you. That's what you're going to say.
Yes, right. Exactly. I support
Typically anti-labor stance.
Diverted to labor, I guess. Yeah, but good luck to SMU with that. For me, Fran Brown, Syracuse, my proof of concept of the year.
Yeah.
Again, taking the concept part pretty literally. A couple things here. So this guy is not even a coordinator, right? Like, he's the defensive backs coach at Georgia. Obviously, that means Kirby Smart thinks pretty highly of him. Kirby's not entrusting his secondary to some jamoke. So the guy knows ball. He can coach. And he can recruit. He can do both of these things because of the job that he held for Kirby Smart. And Syracuse is one of the hardest jobs in the power conferences. Pretty much the best you're going to do there is 8 to 9 wins, except every so often you'll touch 10. And this year they do that in his first year. It takes a 500 team to 10 wins. The offense, this is, I think, what is maybe most interesting about this. Fran Brown does not major in the offensive side of the ball. He's a defensive coach, like I just said. They went from 88th to 14th in offensive SP+, which is a crazy year one turnaround on the side of the ball that doesn't even belong to the head man. Got Jeff Nixon, who had been Saquon Barkley's running backs coach with the Giants, to run that offense. It's funny because they basically had no interest in running the ball. Like, what do we think when you hire an NFL running backs coach to do something? Generally, I think, all right, you're going to just start pounding people. Like, this is what NIU did when they hired Thomas Hammock, who had been the running backs coach with the Ravens, famously enjoyed to run the football as well. But they come in with this NFL running backs coach and this Georgia DBs coach as head coach, and they portal in Kyle McCord. They use their players to the best of their abilities. You got a really good receiver in Aronde Gadsden. You got a handful of guys, actually, who can really go out and catch footballs for you. And you make a huge year one improvement while also playing, reasonably solid defense on the side of the ball that Fran Brown comes from. You're not going to, this is kind of like I talked about with South Carolina. Like, I'm not saying that this is a sign of like much greater things to come. I don't know that in my lifetime we'll see more than a 10-win Syracuse, but to come in so quickly and make Syracuse pretty much the best version of what it can be, very nice stuff. Very impressive.
I think they could. I think 10 is possible again. ACC's volatile, man. ACC's volatile as hell.
I know that Syracuse. I know that the ACC has not released its future schedules yet.
No, it hasn't.
They haven't. But take a look at who Syracuse opens the season with next season. I think we're going to find out pretty soon about them. And their draw is just a lot.
Can you tell the listeners who they open with so they don't have to Google while they're driving? We want to make sure we.
it is in the weirdest place possible. But
No, it's
it is the Tennessee Volunteers on August 30th, and that's the Atlanta game. The Atlanta.
No,
opener.
there's two. There's
two. Okay.
South Carolina's playing Virginia Tech in the Beamer Bowl. It's just one of those years where they book double, and I think the South Carolina game is Friday right now or Monday.
Yeah.
No, the ACC actually. I think I know I'm correct on those games, but the ACC I believe still holds a slot for Labor Day Monday night, and they have not finalized their 2025 schedule. I believe they're the only major of the conference to not do that.
Didn't y'all just say Miami is opening the season with Notre Dame? You know good and damn well which one's going to be on Monday night.
That is, probably. That's technically non-con. I don't know, actually, because I think Notre Dame's week 2.
Right. It's Miami and Notre Dame, so it's technically a conference.
Notre Dame's week 2, they may say no, is what I'm saying. Because and also, if that's in Miami, then the ACC rights would fall. You know how this goes.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Oh, I'm sorry. It's even dumber. It's there. Well, I'm not opposed to this. I shouldn't be so mean. It's a Sunday in Mercedes. Sunday of the 31st in August is going to be Virginia Tech and South Carolina in the Falcon Stadium, and then Saturday is going to be the Cuse game. Sometimes they've doubled up in years past. I think the last time they did it, they put a Louisville Ole Miss game on Monday night or Sunday or something. It kind of sucked and no one went. I don't understand what the lateness of that schedule is. Not to hijack the segment.
Get
your stuff in gear.
Yeah, I have it up right now. So Syracuse's schedule next year, they're going to draw Clemson, Georgia Tech, Miami, SMU, Carolina, which must be stated, Carolina, and Notre Dame. So it's a little bit of a different animal this year.
It is, but I think that you feel pretty good going into it with Fran Brown, given that you have good reason to believe that given their NIL situation and the constraints of that job, that he's going to do as well as he possibly can getting players. And he's already demonstrated that he can delegate a really good offense while figuring out defense himself, an area where he has bona fides. So I feel good.
I want to close the loop on this just for people who are listening. As of right now, the Miami Notre Dame game, it's a technical regular Miami home game in Hard Rock on Saturday. They don't have week 2 scheduled yet. So Richard, to your end, what they might do is give them some kind of grace here. They have a week 3 game. It's the return engagement with A&M. So that would fall to the NBC Peacock deal. And that's on the 3rd Saturday. So the first Saturday they have a game, the 3rd, because they are slotted for one of their ACC agreement games. And there's 4 of those that they haven't slotted for Notre Dame yet. So it's at Pitt, at BC, NC State at home, and the aforementioned Orange. They might be able to fiddle with that, Richard, and then put Miami on Monday night. But I kind of think they won't. And so just for the listener's sake, it's that Monday night thing's weird because nobody wants short going into a decent week 2 game.
Yeah.
It was Florida State, Boston College this year only because Florida State had the break of the Ireland opener. Yeah. So you know what I'm kind of betting or guessing at? Does anyone? I bet it's an SMU game. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you can time capsule this. I'm thinking it'll be an SMU game, not because they're like a sudden draw, but I think that it might be enough to fit into that. Like that Monday night game has not been super like headline power. Also, SMU.
We're not putting Florida State, nope. Miami on it anymore.
And I'm wrong again. I'm sorry, because SMU is scheduled to play Baylor in week 2. They will not probably accept a short week on that. So You can play around with it if you want, come up with your theory, but I know that Monday night has to be filled in Labor Day weekend. I believe it's the ACC's rights with ESPN. I'd be very curious what they can do with that.
You know, Godfrey, you're talking about holiday weekends in Atlanta. We got one of those coming up ourselves in just a couple of days.
Transition King.
Alex, you are really, really excited for Inauguration Day.
Exactly. That's what it is. We will be hoping to bring some joy into our environment this weekend. We are going to be.
Is that why it's a holiday?
Yes. We are going to be having a live show with some of our oldest friends in the world from the Shutdown Fullcast. It is going to be presented by some more of our best, oldest friends in the game, Homefield. Homefield has been with us since before we were even a podcast. They have stepped up to support this weekend in Atlanta, which is going to be a blast. They've become really great friends over the years. And also, I mean, it's good for us that they're friends, but It's good for you that they make the best in the business in collegiate apparel, period, anywhere, in my opinion. Every school is someone's favorite. And as a result, they've got so much thought that goes into the stuff that they make for, at this point, hundreds of schools. Got something for very close to every major football playing school you could think of, and quite a lot who are not in the power conferences or even in FBS. If you go to homefieldapparel.com, you can use the promo code SZD20 for 20% off your first order. At our first live show that we did in DC back in like 2023, I lent Godfrey a home field crew neck, a charcoal one, and never got it back.
You're not going to.
Is it this
if
one?
you wear it this weekend, I might rip it off of you. Yeah, Richard's wearing one right now. It's the same model. Yeah, you can't see this if you're listening, but
Connor,
I do expect. I expect it back.
Connor,
I want that one.
You're not getting it back. I don't even know where it is. I have 3 kids. Do you think I have any idea where anything is right now?
Probably not.
It's not happening.
I guess I'm touched that you want my clothes.
It's a boyfriend hoodie
like,
situation, Alex.
Exactly. It's like a level of intimacy between us
where
that
were
honestly
we?
touches me.
Were we in Minneapolis, you said?
This was the DC show.
Okay, yeah, I just needed a shirt.
Anyway, also coming to Atlanta is our dear friend Wes Bowling, representing Nokian Tires. He will be there. Look for him in the crowd. Congratulations to Joseph for winning the latest tire giveaway from Nokian Tires. You'll see Wes in Atlanta if you'll be there with us. There could be yet more surprises from Nokian for people who are at that show. Who's to say? We are really fortunate to have partners like these. Thank you so much to Home Field for sponsoring this weekend. Thanks so much to Nokian for your support this season. You've blessed our podcast, and we greatly appreciate you stepping up for us. Richard, as we continue with the Zonies, the MCOTWOTY, this is the Minority Coach of the Week of the year.
Yeah, I wanted to take Fran Brown, but because Fran Brown has already been taken, I am going to take what is possibly even more obvious. It's Marcus Freeman. It's clearly Marcus Freeman. I think that when you take the long tail of what this season has entailed, let's take them taking the dumbest loss anybody of their station in the sport has taken all season against Northern Illinois, which at the time, Alex and I both argued had become an annual rite of passage for Notre Dame, to the extent where, like, we expected this to happen in 2025 now because they just kept losing these dumb games. And then after the game, this is a thing that happens, but because of the specific circumstances that I'm about to explain, I'm going to use it for my own narrative purposes. But Marcus Freeman and Thomas Hammock apparently got on the phone after their game, and Marcus asked Thomas Hammock basically how they did it. Basically, what is it that you saw in us?
Like tendencies?
Tendencies, and that's yes. And so Marcus Freeman and Thomas Hammock have that conversation. That is a thing that happens, especially with non-conference situations. But because Thomas Hammock is black, obviously I'm going to use it for my own purposes, which is brother helping brother here. So Northern Illinois helps Notre Dame out, and Marcus Freeman, who has surrounded himself on this staff with Mike Denbrook on offense, and Al Golden on defense, head coach Al Golden on the defensive staff to help him out. And you see Notre Dame become, frankly, a buzzsaw coming home the back half of the season. They were ripping teams limb from limb. They've won, I believe, 13 straight games. And they did it in a complementary football fashion with tremendous special teams, besides the kicking game, tremendous special teams, great defense, and enough offense to get the job done. They didn't lose in dumb spots coming home, even though they had a chance to, that Louisville game, for instance. And they took care of business, and they were able to, frankly, fly under the radar, which they're Notre Dame. Notre Dame is the radar for the most part. And then they go into the college football playoff. They dispatch Indiana in a state championship game, which was the biggest game in Indiana school history, win the state championship in Indiana, which is the state that they actually play in, which is a thing that people often forget or at least don't think about. And then they beat Georgia in the Sugar Bowl, and they summit, not the mountaintop, because obviously they still have a national championship game to play, but they beat a big name team in a big game spot, semifinal or a quarterfinal in this case. And yeah, okay, you feel really good about Marcus Freeman and Notre Dame going in next season, despite what happens on Monday night, because Notre Dame has done this being as injured at key spots to key play. I mean, the best player on their team, Benjamin Morrison, has been out for the bulk of the season. They had their best lineman had an apparently season-ending injury in the first week of camp, but came back to play right guard in the semifinal against Penn State because you jumbled around that offensive line in so many different ways. Your other best player, Jeremiah Love, plays through a knee injury that Marcus Freeman admitted after the Penn State game he didn't really have to. And Jeremiah Love makes this bet, I should say makes this vow that he's not going to hurdle, and then does hurdle a guy who's 6'1" and then has the most impressive 2-yard touchdown run you will ever see. So when you put all of this together, no matter what happens against Ohio State, Marcus Freeman, Notre Dame, like that's minority coach of the year in an interesting schematic spot because of all the adversity that Notre Dame went through and came out on the other side in the national championship game, at the very least, 60 minutes away from a title.
I think there's been noticeably little talk, by the way, about the history that he's making in this title game. He's the first black coach to ever coach in the playoff national championship or the BCS championship. College football exists in society, right? And I think at this moment,
we live in a world.
For whatever reason, I'm not going to play dumb. The folks who have taken power in this country do not really seem to like when it is pointed out that there is a racial difference between someone achieving something and everybody else. Like, I don't know. You don't hear Marcus Freeman.
Alex, they just don't see color.
Yeah. You don't hear Marcus Freeman being referred to as a DEI hire. I imagine if Notre Dame had won only like 9 or 10 games this year, you probably would be.
Oh, that's not true. I guarantee you there's some major websites who said that after Northern Illinois. By the way, while you guys were talking, I checked that 25 schedule. There's no MAC school on there, motherfuckers. I see you. Don't run.
They said
Don't
not again.
Run.
They said not again.
The only G5 school they have is Navy, which is the thing.
Also, it should be stated not only is Marcus Freeman black, he is also Asian. And so there is also that component.
He's checking 2 boxes.
That's right.
Yeah,
when he
also
steps on the field as the national champion or in the national championship game.
And by the way, we will do national championship preview stuff. I believe multiple things in the coffers for you. We will share those with you in the next couple of days as we record this the Wednesday before the national championship. Next Split Zone Duo Award, the Portaling of the Year. Best Transfer Portal Edition, pound for pound. Not just counting the obvious stuff like, oh yeah, Ohio State was able to go and get Caleb Downs. Like, cool, we understand. Talking for pound for pound, wise uses of the portaling that other teams perhaps were not thinking of. I'm starting with Mikael Kamara, the defensive end edge rusher for Indiana, who came with Signetti from JMU. You could also take D'Angelo Pons, cornerback. You could take a couple of defensive tackles. You could take basically the entire Indiana defense or everyone who was good. When you hire a coach and bring players with him from a lower level, it does not always work out. It certainly does not always work out this swimmingly. Like Jonathan Smith brought some Oregon State guys to Michigan State this year, and they had big growing pains with the quarterback Aiden Childs. There were a ton of interceptions. It's not easy, and that's just one example, not to pick on them. It's not easy to jump levels with players and to keep the kind of continuity that Indiana created by bringing basically an entire coaching staff and these guys from James Madison. But it worked, and it worked perfectly. So I just used the JMU Indiana spot as my portaling of the year.
I was going to be cute, try and find something weird to throw here. I just think that would have been a disservice, though, because honestly, so I was really going to try and pass off Dexter Williams, who had a game-winning pass for Georgia Southern. He's the Indiana transfer to beat Marshall and kind of screw up what ended up becoming the Marshall Sunbelt Championship year. The answer is Diego Pavia, because the coolest thing that I never thought I'd see that I saw in person and told the story, I think twice on the show on the SCD network, was how I was kind of chilling for one weekend and I wasn't on hurry up duty or anything, and kind of casually watching the games. And then in a very blurry 18 minutes or whatever, I ended up standing on the field at Vanderbilt to see something I never thought I would see, not in a jaded way, just in a logical way. And I wrote an on-site sort of gamer column, whatever, for the Post. And at the time, I don't know what the number is now, I haven't looked it up, but Alabama had, I believe, the highest talent composite score in history on that roster. In the history of 247, they had their highest talent composite score. And they lost to Vanderbilt, not solely because of, but because of the leadership or just the fucking daring do of Diego Pavia, who made Vanderbilt watchable in every single game, entertaining on almost every drive. I casually went to the Virginia Tech opener and saw something I did not expect at all. Knowing what his reputation was, he'd beaten Auburn and New Mexico State the previous year. This was a completely different beast. The way Vanderbilt comports itself as a program now, they were it was like those testosterone pills you see on television. It was like instantly gain confidence. Like I don't know if a transfer portal addition at a single position has ever changed a program so much.
Yeah, and we might get to see. It seems like we're going to get to see more Diego Pavia because of certain legal actions, which I'm opposed to philosophically, but because it's him, I'm going to be nice about it.
Wait, why are you opposed to people getting paid for doing a job?
No, it's just it's the quarterback thing. Like we're going to have 40-year-old quarterbacks in college football, and it's going to kill development at the position.
Specifically the JUCO thing. Yeah.
It's not going to kill anything. Like there will always be a place for good quarterbacks to play.
Hope so.
I'm frankly taking Curtis Rourke's for the similar reason that Alex took the Indiana defensive players. I think Curtis Rourke, he's a guy where, yes, a little bit of preliminary, I should say is the word for it. NFL draft burn when he was at Ohio, gets hurt. Oh, man. Moves on to Indiana, plays for Signetti, and apparently played on a torn ACL this season, which is nuts.
Don't do that.
Again, tore the ACL again and played on it. Didn't have to, and then comes into this school and produces the best football season it has ever seen in the first season of this head coach. Curtis Rourke is like will go down in history college football player. I don't even know if Colt Hero probably undersells it. As far as Indiana is concerned, it ain't statue territory, but he's one of the best players in school history. Easy.
Yeah, I mean, when you think of Indiana football and cool stuff, there's not that long a list of players that a normie college football fan will think of. Pretty much Michael Penix Jr. and him, right? You just talk to your average civilian on the street who has loose familiarity with Indiana football.
Go Falcons.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. No, I like that. Okay. Very good uses of the portaling by all of these programs. All right. Final award that we're going to give out. It wouldn't be the Zonies if we didn't get a little bit mean to go out the door, because I think building people up is fun, but frankly, tearing people down is, one of my favorite things to do, especially when they're extremely well compensated and, they can handle it. The bad situation of the year, also known as the Bryan Harsin Award for Forestalling the Inevitable. This is for an absolute dead-end team/coach who just need to break up already and about whom you can say nothing optimistic as we close the 2024 season. Stephen Godfrey, why don't you lead us with your Harsin Award?
I had nominees. I had like a full
fine.
Best Actor category.
Take us through your nominees.
It was like I couldn't not say these names. Freeze at Auburn, Trent Dilfer at Alabama Birmingham, one Mr. Gundy over in Stillwater. Let me know how third and Grantham goes on the career preservation track. And then I still am including Satterfield at Cincinnati. And none of these are the winner, though. The winner, in a shocker, and I'm going to read again exactly what Alex prompted. Absolute dead-end team/coach. And I took that as a situation between the two, okay? They need to break up already. Mark Stoops at Kentucky.
Great.
I think Mark Stoops at Kentucky, Mark Stoops and the Kentucky football program would both benefit from this immediately. I'm not going to get into the Iowa thing. I've learned my lesson. I don't mean Iowa. I mean that. Would you think that? Let's look at the success Brett Bielema has had at Illinois. If you just gave Mark Stoops another situation and he just got away from the Kentucky, I think he might flourish for it. Now, I don't think he'll do that. I think he'll retire, and I think he'll just kind of go out. And he's very much as I'm sitting here because my office is cold, like this with his hand. You're watching, like kind of arms folded, chest out, shoulders back, saying, fire me, pay me, fire me, pay me. I'm not leaving. I'm not leaving without that buyout. That's the standoff between Kentucky and Mark Stoops right now. Kentucky, understandably, is looking around the market and thinking, like, are we going to sink that much money into firing and replacing, or are we going to try and, build collectives? And hey, he also weirdly always plays Georgia to like 2 points, But I think the acrimony and the torpor and sloth, I use those words together a lot. I don't think, and Richard can probably speak more specifically to this, the rolling the dice on the hot hand OC and the NFL relationship, it can't yield consistency because those guys are like Liam Cohen's with the Bucks right now. And like, you can't do that forever. Like, you're like, hey, I found this young play caller who's either Shanahan or McVay tree. Like, you can't do that forever. And I think that time has sort of run out on that. And I think they're about what they were this year is very close to what we're going to get for a while, unless something significant changes in Lexington.
I think when everyone knows that you tried really hard to leave and had all but
I didn't
done
even
it,
acknowledge that.
It takes something out of the sales. Maybe I should update my thinking on that, because we are sort of in a more mercenary world now. But
yeah, it's the SEC, and I think I don't even think your rank and file Kentucky fan is like personally aggrieved. If it was basketball, they'd have fucking burned his house down. But I don't think they're aggrieved, Alex. But I to your point, I think when you get in those cigar rooms, I think it does matter. It's got to. He was always like, everything on the come up that I ever heard about Stoops, and we're kind of getting into like a Coach Gossipy realm here, but we'll do it. He was a Friends of Cole guy. If you live near Kentucky like I do, I live dangerously close. You'll see these tags that, you can get like a different kind of car tag. And the Kentucky tags will be black, and it has a circle. It says Friends of Coal, which is like their lobbying group, coalition, whatever. It's the coal mining side of the state, not the agriculture side of the state, which is the west side. I'd always heard these stories about like he just kicked ass with sort of recruiting new money and or money that had stopped giving and the east side of the state into like caring about Kentucky football. And I have to think that like some of that shit might have run its course with him. And I know he's entrenched and he is well liked by some key people. But Alex, yeah, to your point, I think that, man, that's a hard thing to sidestep. That's a hard thing to ignore, because his ass was on the plane when they were holding up the L's last year after they beat Louisville. Do you guys remember that?
Literally, yes. Yeah.
Like they were mocking.
Do you mean
Louisville.
he was literally on the plane, or metaphorically?
Dude, he told people
very close
he told people
hours away
he was getting the job. He told people, which
I
frankly,
put it out on Twitter because
part of the reason he didn't get the job.
Yeah, I myself and others put it out on Twitter because, like, I mean, I had 6, 7, not agent people, football people being like, "Oh yeah, they're calling around," and also Kentucky was calling around too. Like the whole. I mean, it doesn't take a fucking wizard to figure out who they were going to go after. Those top three names, but like,
does he happen to coach in New Orleans?
Well, he was. I mean, he's the one, but there was a 2
Dennis
and a 3,
Allen
and like
was going to take the Kentucky job.
Well, Darren Rizzi, what's the guy's name? Rizzi.
He's not going to get
right.
that job, is he? As he,
Dude,
no, he's
I
not.
don't know.
They're not going to.
I don't know.
Look, just make it dumb because that's what you deserve. Alex, you're right. That's probably a hard thing to sidestep. When you're talking to someone who can make a $500,000 problem go away and write a check, and who's Richard and 4 foot up a bull's ass, those people tend to hold grudges.
Richard Johnson, your bad situation of the year.
Yeah, I think that bad situation. It's hard to box yourself into saying a bad situation cannot get better in the transfer portal era. Pretty much any school.
It's a really good point.
But I am going to take Oklahoma here. I know what happened with Oklahoma with the wide receivers being out, but you didn't have a quarterback on this roster who could play. You tried 2 of them. Offensive line wasn't great. Yes, the defense was good. Yes, the Alabama game happened, but you know the offense is not why they beat Alabama. Be an adult. You come into this league, and Texas did one thing, and you did another. Actually, that also happened on the field against each other in Dallas. where Oklahoma could not move the ball and could not score a point, and Texas didn't have to get out of first gear. That's kind of the personification writ large of both of their initial seasons in the SEC. When 2, 3, 4 years ago, it looked like Oklahoma was going to be the one who hit the ground running. So yes, you're bringing in John Mateer, who's the best quarterback in the portal, probably. Yes, you're bringing in a new offensive coordinator. Yes, you're bringing in like 4 new wide receivers. So we'll see. But for now, Brent Venables looks in over his head at Oklahoma.
Richard, I know, God knows we've done 11 million bits on age discrepancy on this show, but I'm curious if this does hold the same way for you guys that it does for me. I've had Texas fans confide this to me in my like real life, that it is weird to see the level of physical dominance that Texas exerts over Oklahoma in that game recently in the last couple of years, because we are conditioned. Like when I was in college, I lived with my best friend in college, did not care about Ole Miss at all. He's from Pflugerville. He is to this day diehard Texas fan. And we watched every year those Stoops defenses physically humiliate Texas. And that was like a defining mark, really up until the air raid changes Oklahoma. They finally kind of like, I know they had Leach, but I'm talking about later on when they get into like, we'll beat you 52-49 if we have to.
Yeah, Texas hasn't had a first-round drafted offensive lineman in like a decade. I think it's more than a decade. And
now to see like these last 2-3 years where they're kind of Oklahoma-ing, Oklahoma is unsettling for both sides of that rivalry. Pleasantly so if you're a Texas fan, and they'll never cop to that publicly, that they're like, oh, wow, I can't believe we're beating on Oklahoma the way we are. But that's been the vibe, man.
Yeah, I'm fascinated in what happens if Oklahoma's not able to get it in gear with all these new parts next season.
Gosh, I mean, I don't want to say we know what, right? I kind of feels like we know what'll happen, right? Although, I mean, this was a year of guys surviving who came into a year with us thinking
you want to be job number 1 on the board. That's like, yeah. What's their schedule?
My Bryan Harsin Award for Forestalling the Inevitable heads to Ruston, Louisiana. Sonny Cumbie, Louisiana Tech. I don't understand exactly why this is still happening, although I guess, Godfrey, I sort of do understand. We all thought, I mean, you had been talking about this for our SplitZoneDuo.com subscribers for months, that he looked like a dead man walking.
Tie for first coach fired. 2024 cycle. Tie. When I did this in August was Charles Huff and Sonny Cumbie. That was my tie for first on the first 2 coaches fired.
Yeah, I had Stan Drayton, who I think wound up being 7th, and I forget who Richard had. We're going to dig up our time capsule, actually, at the end of this month. The predictions that we buried before the season. We're going to see how we did, and we're going to go over where we were right, where we were wrong, and why. But in the case of Louisiana Tech, it's never good when you can only point to, wow, we couldn't afford a Conference USA buyout as the only plausible reason why you're not trying something new. That's fine. If you can't afford it, your budgetary situation better than I do, but they're not good. This was his best season in 3, and it was a 5-7. They hung an 8th loss up there when they got tagged in to play the 68 Ventures Bowl after Marshall did not play in that game. I think if you were trying to sort of like retrofit a reason for optimism, you could say that they played against Western Kentucky and Jacksonville State, the 2 championship games teams in this league, pretty well. They beat WKU in an absolute slog, 12-7, and they were competitive against Jacksonville State as well. But man, I'm trying hard here. There's not a lot of exciting things happening. Like when we were previewing the season, we kind of made a sport of being able to find something optimistic about basically every team in FBS. And I think the one that I couldn't then was Temple, which is why I thought that Drayton was going to get fired. And he did, just not quite as quickly as I thought. If you just look at this Tech roster right now, man, I don't know. It's going to be a hard thing to put lipstick on when we get around to previewing the next season, unless they have the world's greatest spring portal window ever. I gave real consideration, much as it hurt me, to Pitt for this, because I think that the Narduzzi thing is going in the complete wrong direction. And anytime you go from 7-0 to 7-6, you're in huge trouble, in my opinion. Actually, like Charlie Strong about that in terms of like the trajectory of his USF tenure. But at least, Narduzzi has shown before that he can be a winning head football coach, and Pitt looked like it a few months ago. Cumbie, I don't know, man. Just looks pretty bleak to me.
Tech needs money. I mean, like tech needs money. It's that simple.
Or lightning in a bottle, or you just get like an amazing scheme coach who can do it for a year.
I know that they they were kind of putting out there like, well, it was better down the stretch or some I remember having one conversation about this. So I was like, I guess. I mean, look, nobody's going to say, hey, we're broke. It's not like they can say that publicly.
Well, some of them are.
I mean, some of them are definitely telling you without saying it. I swear to God, the 12-7 win over there it is. It's that 12-7 win over Western where people are like, he could keep his job, and I was like, Jesus.
Yeah.
That was it. I knew there was one where it was like, okay, like
sure, right? Like we can find a reason. It's tough.
Also, Alex, I will say they you know what? This might be the actual explanation. They started quietly shopping, and they went to a mall they couldn't afford, like the whole mall, the whole like the nice mall, like the really fancy strip mall. This is more of an LA joke, like
sure the Americana.
Yeah, you're not. The fuck are you doing on Rodeo Drive? Like that because they were kicking tires on people who are like, I'm sorry, what? So that's part of the problem.
That is the 2024 Zonies Splitty Ds Split Zone Duo Awards. Thank you so much for being with us over the course of the season. We are not done. We will have national championship previewing. We will have national championship reaction. We will have our time capsule dig up. We've got some more stuff planned kind of as we wrap up the season. Fellas, always a pleasure. See you shortly.
Oklahoma has Michigan week 2.
Oh, God. Jesus.
See you then.